In your dream arcade, you've probably got Space Invaders, Outrun, Battlezone, and all manner of majestic, dedicated arcade cabinets which have been built specifically to house that one game. Cabinets with custom artwork, sometimes vinyl, sometimes sprayed with stencils, like we see on this fabulous original Williams Defender cabinet. You've probably chosen games with unique control panels and their instructions on those panels with how to play it. Controls which elevate the game experience, like a Star Wars yoke or the handlebars of Sega's Super Hang-On. But these dream cabinets are only half the story of the arcade. As these dedicated games became less popular, they would be upcycled, painted over, drilled into and hacked to host something more in demand and more profitable. That was just common sense to a business trying to make ends meet, and many a small arcade owner was just trying to survive in any way that they could. This Silkworm, for example, started life as a Moon Patrol arcade before the operator painted the sides black and swapped out the marquee to give the 1982 game a new lease of life for the late 80s and early 90s. Suppliers then, recognising the need to easily rotate games and keep the lineup fresh and affordable, would sell generic arcade cabinets just like these ones here. In time, they adopted the Jammer standard interface to allow you to quickly swap out the game boards from most major game manufacturers. It's only fitting then that in our museum we reflect the history of the arcade and we celebrate this kind of cabinet just like any other. They really were the workhorses of the arcade. We'll be looking at such machines down here in the arcade archive today, one which we've converted in some detail and 3 others in less detail but equally as impressive. So you're going to see 4 conversions in total today. We've probably gone to more effort than original arcade operators would have done back in the day, but that's just the way we do things around here. And it's been really nice to upcycle, to convert generic, neglected and unloved machines, to put them in a museum setting and to bring them up to a standard where people get excited when they see them and really want to play on them. So we're going to show you all of that today, and we're also going to talk about some changes that are happening here at the Retro Collective. Why am I down here in the arcade archive? You normally see me in the cave. Well, we're doing a lot of work to bring everything together into one place now. The people, the museums, the exhibits, to be able to share everything in one place and on one channel. A lot of changes will be happening early next year, but those changes start now, and we're going to talk a bit more about that mid-episode today, because we want to get into the meat of these arcade cabinets first of all. And to do that, I need to be joined by Richard from Heber. So let's credit him up and hit start. There we go. Seamless transition, Richard. Yeah. Welcome to the game. Lots to talk about today. And I know you're a big fan of these generic cabs as well, because just like me, British arcades were very much made up of these types of cabinets, weren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. I have very fond memories of Jammer arcades. They were the ones you had in your leisure centres, your community centres. When I was growing up, that was the first exposure really to arcades. Yeah. And our journey today starts all the way up in York a little over a year ago when Alex made a trip. Were you on this trip, or was No, I think Holly went up.
Yeah.
Holly went up and it was Alex, yeah.
Yeah, and you can see here a workshop full of old arcades. This all belonged to the late Mark Shepherd, and I'll include a link to the full video below if you want to see it. Now, while Alex was here, he bought some of these very sturdy, very well-built generic cabinets that you can see being wheeled out here. You even bought a couple for yourself in Heber, didn't you?
We did, yeah. We wanted a few for testing and general development. So yeah, we thought they were wonderful. They're a bit heavy, but they are very, very well built.
And you can see they must have had quite a life, because they've got really chunky security on the coin door on the front. There's cigarette burns on the control panel on this one. So these are the kind of things we would have seen in standard British arcades.
They were in a naffy, the 2 we had.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, we found the paperwork inside. They were pulling in about £700 a week.
We also pulled a dusty old cabinet out of our own storage unit. This one here, Richard is going to show us in detail today. And it's got quite an odd button layout, 3x2, sorry.
3x2, yeah.
And Dan and Holly took on an incomplete little MIDI cabinet with very, very pink results, as we'll see later. But first, the R in R-Type stands for Richard, because you've wanted this one in the arcade for such a long time. What does this game mean to you, Richard?
It means trips to Blackpool, trips to all of the holiday destinations around, really. I went straight to R-Type, and put coins in. I didn't get very far because it's a brutal game. And when you're playing 10p at a time, it's difficult. Yeah. But yeah, it's got such fond memories for me. It is a bit of a memory game, but it's also a skill game. You've really got to be quite quick on your reflexes. So yeah, it's one of my favourite games.
And would you have played it in a generic cabinet, or was there a dedicated cabinet?
Both, definitely. When it came to our leisure centre, it was in a generic Jammer cab, and I remember it most fondly for there. But I did get to play both R-Type and R-Type 2 and their original cabinets on holiday. Yeah, I think it was at Butlins actually, the first place I actually exhibited it. Yeah.
Well, while Richard's been talking, we've cut now into the start of this. It's not a restoration, it's a conversion and restoration of the generic cabinet and then conversion to R-Type. Do you know anything about the history of this cabinet or the make or the model of it?
Not a great deal. It looks like a typical cabinet from the 90s, I would have said. So I don't know a huge amount of the history behind it, but we do have 3 of them. So that's one nice thing. We can actually make up 3 similar cabs.
Hold your horses, Richard. I have to say a quick thank you to PCBWay.com, who are the sponsor of this episode. And if you take a dig into their website at PCBWay.com, check out their shared projects and look in the retro stuff section, you'll find a familiar name. As well as lots of awesome, useful retro projects that you can order with one click, you'll also find one of Heber's open source projects in there. I recommend PCBWay.com for all your PCB and related needs, and we thank them for their support. You start by stripping it all back, yanking out some mismatched joysticks, and then the whole cabinet is clamped. What are you doing here with the clamps?
The whole cabinet was a bit wonky and falling apart, so it needed to be seriously clamped and glued. That was the big first step. Otherwise, the side would have fallen off. So yeah.
Any additional strengthening, or was it just the
glue?
Yeah,
I did put some extra wood battens and screw, and then put quite a bit of glue in just to keep everything solid. So yeah, the whole marquee was sort of fallen down and collapsed, so that had to be all pushed back up and put it back into place.
And there's some burning on the screen here. I think it looks like metal slug, perhaps?
Yeah, I think you identified it as metal slug. Yeah, it was definitely converted to run those types of games in its sort of latter years, I think. Yeah.
Right. But really no sign of a system, no sign of a Neo Geo left in the cabinet. It was just empty.
No, it was just a good quality jammer edge connector on there. The mains wiring was a little bit suspect, but yeah, good quality jammer wiring.
And now you're cutting some acrylic. This is for the marquee and for the control panel?
Yeah, the control panel was a bit worse for wear, and because it had so many odd buttons and things in the wrong places, we wanted to have a nice new layout. So yeah, the control panel and marquee. The marquee we wanted to turn into a lit marquee, so that was something that needed to at least be cut out in acrylic.
Your button placement though, this is with other games in mind. This is not just for R-Type, so you're thinking to the future with this.
Yeah, I'm trying to support the standard 3-button layout of a jammer system on 2 players. So there was a lot of button configurations for dedicated machines, and as we know, R-Type only had 2 buttons. It had shoot and the orb attract, and that's it. So it needed the other button because we're going to put more different cabs,
we'll rotate the games from time to time. Yeah. And what buttons and sticks did you use? Anything specific, or again, just what was to hand?
No, they're actually pseudo-hap joysticks with soft micro switches, because I don't like loud, clicky, noisy micro switches, so I wanted soft ones. So it feels very nimble, very tight. It's actually really good for shooters. That's really what my main focus was, make it good for shooters.
And then the T-moulding with a bit of persuasion to take it around the corners there. That actually looks like it was fitting really nicely, that T-moulding.
It was, yeah, it was fitting in, and we found a few good techniques to put T-moulding in now. You don't want to just whack it with a hammer, so we use very soft rubber mallets and rubber edges of the mallets. So yeah, that's a really good way to fit it in.
And then it all starts to come together cosmetically with the monitor bezel going back in. And then the wiring, did you tidy it up or did you rip out the existing wiring?
All the mains wiring pretty much took all of that off because there was a filter in there which wasn't very good. So we put a new filter in, put a new switch because the switch was a bit crunchy, and all of the wiring was very, very thin. It was the most thinnest wiring I've ever seen in an arcade machine. So yeah, really chunked all that up so at least it was safe. Still got the fuse and everything in there, so all of it was perfectly fine to use, but because we were changing it, we wanted to make it extra, extra robust.
And then the marquee here I really like because you've retained the generic style of the cabinet, the round circles of the monitor bezel, with an R-type twist. And is that designed to be easily swapped out then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I thought long and hard about how to do the marquee, and as you say, trying to keep that sort of red and black theme was a real sort of plus point for those machines. So that goes nicely on the marquee, and then you can easily just swap them out. So it's actually printed onto a very thin transparent layer. We can just swap in and out with other marquees, and then there's a thicker polycarbonate layer on top, which is nice and scratch resistant. So that'll take all the heavy work.
I don't think you're going to let anyone pull that R-Type out there anytime soon.
No, I might let them change it to R-Type 2 or R-Type Leo, but yeah, I think R-Type's going to be in there for a little while, definitely until Christmas. So.
What went in it? Was it an original board?
Yeah, we've got an original R-Type board. So I tested it with a different board to start with, different jammer board, and that was fine. Just wanted to test all of the buttons because I knew R-Type only had 2, so I wanted to make sure that all 3 buttons worked and everything else was okay. But yeah, we have an original R-Type board.
Yeah, they're not cheap to come by, are they?
No, they're very difficult to get hold of. Yeah, you can make a conversion of another board into an R-Type, but yeah, the original is getting hold of them very difficult. So I always go one less than the maximum. Oh, and that gets me quite often.
When people come here, in fact, before they even come here, they often get in touch and say, have you got a Street Fighter 2? And I understand why they're asking that. It was such a significant machine. It was part of the revival of the arcade after it started to wane at the end of the 80s and into the early 90s. Street Fighter 2 really gave it the kick, quite literally up the backside, that the arcade needed. So people have got lots of fond memories of Street Fighter 2. Are you one of those people, Richard?
I am, but more for the Super Nintendo version.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Mainly because I think during that era of Street Fighter 2 in the arcade, I was probably out clubbing and enjoying other things. So I have a bit of a blind spot of that era. Mortal Kombat, I enjoyed in later life, and also Street Fighter 2. But I did really enjoy it on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I enjoyed it on the Super Nintendo. It was at my local arcade, very much an upcycled generic jammer cabinet that it was put in. Right opposite Fatal Fury on the Neo Geo.
Oh, wow, okay.
Which is quite interesting, but Street Fighter 2, I think that was the better of the 2 games, in my opinion. So everybody comes here expecting to see it. We had to put one in here, so we converted one of these York cabs to be a Street Fighter 2. And one man who is a fan of Street Fighter 2 is Dan, and here he is with a time lapse of the transformation that he did, because the York cabinets were in very solid, very good condition. So this is very much a cosmetic transformation more than anything else. Volunteer Tony is seen here helping Dan. Thank you, Tony. And he's taken it from a plain cabinet to a fighting machine. And you don't need us talking all over it, so let's just sit back and enjoy it with some music. Here's a transformation for Street Fighter 2. don't claim to be any good at this game.
Okay.
I was a fan of Mortal Kombat. My guilty pleasure was Pit Fighter. Awful game.
Okay, yeah.
But I was more for the side scrollers, the final fights and the double dragons.
Definitely.
It's not as good as the Amiga version.
No! The Amiga version, oh my crikey, that's truly terrible, isn't it? Yeah, I don't even know why they bothered. Oh
yes!
No!
The fat man
so
wins.
So close, that's good stuff.
And if Street Fighter 2 isn't your thing, then how about Ghosts and Goblins, a rock-hard classic? And just like Street Fighter 2, we've converted another one of the York cabinets to be this Ghosts and Goblins cab. Here it is, close up. And well, let's see how far I can get on one credit. And before we move on to the final conversion, the very pink conversion, let's talk about changes that have been happening here at the Retro Collective in the Arcade Archive in the Cave. Lots of changes going on, Richard, because during the summer, just before the summer, Alex decided to take a step back from the business side of Arcade Archive, didn't he? He was feeling the pressure of running the business side and conflicted about turning his hobby from hobby to business and the pressures that came with that, and perhaps in danger of ruining his hobby. Now, Alex did make a video explaining that he wanted to step back from that side of things, didn't he? So we will link that in the video description if you want to see the full video. We have seen him since.
Yep.
A lot happier, isn't he?
He's a lot happier, yeah. He wants to create content. He wants to do fun arcade things. He was really struggling on the business side, and that is a big part of running a museum. You have to keep the business side going. There's lots of background work to do, and that was the bit that was really getting him down, I think. So it's better if he can step back and do the things he enjoys.
Yeah, which he has been doing, and he's also been back to carry on work with Gunfight, and we're hoping to see him soon. He's agreed to work on the conclusion of the Sprint 2 series to get that cabinet done, so it'd be really nice to see that. And that means we had to make some decisions here at the Collective. Without Alex to front and drive the arcade, how do we support the museum with the content, because this was always a business that was a combination of museum and content to support it? How do we do that knowing that I'm in the cave trying to support that museum? You've got your commitments with Heber. So we decided the best way forward was to bring all of our skills together and to just share everything, share all of our resources. And that includes bringing the content from the arcade, from the cave, from Heber's product development and product updates, and just bringing it all into one place. And that's what's going to happen officially early next year. It will be here on my channel, so we'll make some changes to the branding and to the channel early next year. I will still be front and center. I will still be editing the videos, so it will still have exactly the same flavor, but with the advantage of drawing on all of Richard's experiences, Holly's experience, Dan's experience, all of these wonderful skills that we've got in the building to create what I hope will be an even better channel. And that will encompass the Arcade Archive. So that's why we're down here today, isn't it, Richard?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm excited.
I'm very excited. I think it gives us an opportunity to create more content, feed to you, to do editing, all the intricate work you do behind the scenes to get that into a polished video that then supports the whole collective, not just the arcade, not just the cave, not just the product side, but everything. So it's a very exciting time for us. We've gone through these changes. Holly's come on board, brought a whole load of administrative functions, which was not getting done. So that's great. It's really nice to have that side of things. And now the content can flow. Yeah.
Content attracts visitors. Visitors help us to raise money through the museums. The money raised helps us to preserve more machines, which turns into content. And it's just this lovely circle of preservation, sharing, and growing the museum. So we will make I think an official video about all of these changes, but we just wanted to prepare you as these changes will be happening. Now, speaking of changes, let's get back to our final conversion of the day, the very pink one. And this was Holly's choice. We've had Richard's R-Type, we've had my Street Fighter 2. This was one for Holly, and it's Bomb Jack. This is a really cute little cabinet, and I think it might have been at some point in its life a Rally X.
We think so, yes.
We think so. Yeah. It was missing an awful lot of the cabinet, so we decided to give it a new lease of life. Taking inspiration from the pinks of the game's logo, she went with a full pink wrap, control panel transformation, monitor bezel, the whole shebang. Here's Dan working his magic again with the artwork, and that distinctive Bombjack logo goes on there. The game originally released in 1984. There was, of course, a completely new wiring loom put in here and a lot of fettling to squeeze a 14-inch monitor in, and it's not a monitor, it's just a regular TV that we've squeezed in there for now because we didn't have a 14-inch monitor that we could fit in there. Not ideal. We will swap that out at some point. Certainly makes everyone smile when they come in and see it.
Definitely, yeah.
Bombjack fan? I love
huge Bombjack fan.
I don't think I might have seen it in the arcade, but most of my Bombjack was on the Amstrad CPC.
Yep, I think mine was the computers as well, but I loved it in the arcade. It definitely was at our local leisure centre for a while, and yeah, thoroughly enjoyed trying to get those bombs in the right sequence. It's harder than it looks.
Yeah. And Holly, please turn it down, because wherever you are in the arcade, have you noticed the attract sound is deafening?
We can hear it from 2 floors up. Yeah. I don't think I played this on the C64. I definitely played it on the Amiga. Don't know how good it is on the 8 bits.
So that's been 4 conversions of generic cabinets, and we have gone above and beyond with these conversions because operators back in the day, they wouldn't have vinyl wrapped the whole side of a Ghosts and Goblins generic cab. They wouldn't have done it to that standard. But we had to, because we see the reaction that it gives people when they walk in here. They see Ghosts and Goblins, they want to play it. They don't question it. They just go, that looks like a really nice cabinet, I want to play it. It doesn't look like a dirty cabinet. I'm not afraid to touch it. The controls feel great. Like you said, on R-Type, you've picked specific buttons and joysticks that just feel really nice for that type of game. So these cabinets make for a really nice experience. Street Fighter 2, in fact, we did request a couple of little tweaks from Holly just to get the buttons just right, so it felt right. You could tell it didn't feel quite right at first with the buttons, but she made some modifications. So really nice conversions. There will, of course, be plenty more. How many more of these generic cabs have we got?
We've got 2 more identical ones to the one we've just done for R-Type. So we'll turn those into maybe a vertical shooter, maybe a run and gun, that side of things. But yeah, we'll have a nice 3 lineup of all of those. And then we've got another Neo Geo and a current Neo Geo we're working on, and another 2 after that. Yeah,
and we've got the York driving cab. So any suggestions for this cabinet here? It's got the steering wheel. I don't think it has a brake. It just has the throttle.
Just has
and a
throttle.
high and low gear and maybe a button. So if you can think of a game that would suit that, I think WEC Le Mans has a brake. Chase HQ, does that have a brake? We'll have to look into it. But any suggestions?
Who uses the brake anyway?
Who uses the brake? Let us know what we should do with that cab. And of course, there'll be plenty more dedicated cab restorations, as well as these generic cab restorations. And Richard's been 3D printing again. There's going to be another 3D printed monster coming along soon. Really exciting story attached to that one. So please do subscribe if you haven't already done so. If you've come across from the Arcade Archive channel, thank you for visiting, and please do subscribe. And I look forward to showing you everything that the Retro Collective has to offer here in the future on this channel. Take care. Oh, and go to retrocollective.co.uk if you want to come and visit and try these out for yourself. Okay, see you next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.